Hi, I'm Jonny Smith, and this is the Golf GTE. In other words, a Golf that's a plug-in hybrid, that's a bit sporty. First thing I've noticed about this car, and it's brilliant, and I had to show you this, just listen to this. Right, just those two notes sounds just like Depeche Mode's Personal Jesus. The very beginning of Depeche Mode's Personal Jesus. I can't play that song to you because it's copyright law, and Robert Llewellyn would have to give about £1 million to pay for the rights, but do it. We're in the midlife update, as VW calls it, definitely not a facelift. Midlife update of the Golf Mark 7 GTE. What you really need to know is the combination of your 8.7 kilowatt hour battery pack and your fuel gives you a theoretical 580 mile range. That's 31 miles of battery power alone. And you can decide how you play with those, whether you want assistance, whether you want pure EV, whether you want GTE mode, which is another button down here by the gear shifter. So you've got a 1.4 TSI direct injection motor under the bonnet. That's petrol, direct injection, turbocharged. And then on the side of the gearbox, which is a DSG gearbox, in other words, it's not an automatic, it's not a manual, it's a double clutch gearbox, which you can either treat as an auto or you can use these paddles. It's a 6-speed gearbox. Tapped onto the side of the gearbox on this front wheel drive car is the electric motor. Now VW have told me this is exactly the same drivetrain as the original Golf GTE, which came out about 2 years ago, and Rob drove that car. So you can choose the different modes. So right now we are in, it says here next to the gear stick, you've got some buttons. E mode, press that and you've got a display here, which means electric only mode. I can press it and I can select hybrid, which obviously uses both the engine and the motor, or I can go to battery charge mode, which means you can charge the battery as you drive, and it has more aggressive regen on the braking, or you can hold the battery like you can on things like Amperes. And what that means is you can charge the car, hold the charge, maximum charge as it is, and just drive off the engine and save it for a city. So there's like 5 different things you can do with it. I'm holding up 4 fingers, I can't add up. 5 things you can do with it. Now the GTE name, I've got a bit of a, I find it's a bit confusing, because when I think of GTE as being 80s Vauxhalls and Opels. Vauxhall Astra GTE, Opel Manta GTE, all those things, which is probably revealing to you my age. But some people would say, oh, well, no, the GTE started with Ferrari in the early 60s, 1962 Ferrari 250 GTE. And then you could say, oh no, I think of it as 70s, a Reliant Scimitar GTE. But VW have decided to, instead of call it a GTI E, or whatever they might have called it, they call it the GTE. The minute I got in it and drove it 5 miles, you can really tell that this is a car that's really been well thought of and dialed in properly. This is a driver's car. A lot of plug-ins, a lot of EVs aren't really catering for driving enthusiasts. And what I mean by that is a car that you can feel the damping's just right, the steering communication is excellent, the weight of the controls is set just right. The infotainment system is revised for this facelifted model. The touchscreen's really quick. The clarity's amazing. I mean, the clarity of this is very good. The resolution and everything is just incredible. So I'm really impressed with it. So you go into the E-range monitor, and the E-displays, as it's called, shows you power flow, which is your graphics showing when you're regenning and all of that jazz. Charging behavior, when you want to set your departure time, if you want to charge in the night. But anyway, back to the GTE. The dash binnacle in front of you here is all digital, which was first seen on the Audi, and they've brought it over to the Volkswagen group. You press GTE mode, the throttle response tightens, the regen braking is more aggressive. In other words, it's the sporty mode. unlike a lot of electric cars and normal plug-ins, this is really a sporty car. In GTE mode, that you can change gear on the paddles and it's really sharp and it's quick and it's immediate. The suspension is damped just right, despite the fact this is like over 1,600 kilos, so compared to the other Golfs in the nest, it is a heavy car. It's like 200 kilos, I think, more, maybe more than that actually, more than the GTI. I was really looking forward to driving this car because I thought to myself, how can you have a car that's, 39 grams per kilometre tax bracket that can be really good fun? And it's a really good passenger car. That's the thing about the Golf. I know it's such a common thing for a motoring journalist to say, but the thing about the Golf is it's a very neat package and a very usable package. It ticks so many damn boxes, and that's why these cars are always popular. Now this will do 0 to 62 in 7.6 seconds. Compare that to the GTD, that does it in 7.4 seconds, and the Golf GTI does it in 6.4 seconds. So, all right, it's a tad more than a second than a Golf GTI to 62. But then you look at the MPG, and you look at the fact you've got all the usual things you'd expect, like stop-start, like we have now. You've got the ability to run, let's do it, on electric only like this. And suddenly, that's the thing, this is a car that's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, but a Jekyll and Hyde that really works. I've driven it 100 miles this morning on a combination of motorway and about 40 miles of back roads, fairly carefully, like normally, not thrashing it. And I got 59 to the gallon. That was combining the 30-mile range of charge with real-world driving, bit of flappy paddle. You can expect about 60 to the gallon out of this car, which is kind of what VW diesels have done for some time. But, and here's the thing, you can argue that that's not brilliant, given all the technology and the weight that we're carrying around. But that 30-mile charging range is more than what most people's daily commute is. My wife, for example, her commute to work is 15 miles each way. She can drive this to work and drive it back probably, and the engine won't start unless you overrode the electric features. And that's pretty good. Monday to Friday, you might not strike the engine up on this car. I found out a couple of days ago that the Volkswagen factory is Germany's #2 tourist attraction. Now, I love the fact that that's the case. My first car was a Volkswagen, and I like the history of the company. But does that mean that Germany's quite boring? Whenever you're driving a car like this, you're under no illusion, and VW are under no illusion either, that this is a car that's obviously been designed for the piston engine, for the internal combustion engine, and adapted to house the eco parts. But come 2020, Volkswagen say that's when things will change radically, because all these ID concepts they've been coming up with for the last 2 years, and they've come up with 3 big ID concepts, those are showing the way VW's going. Remember, VW is scrapping diesel, it's moving away from diesel because of Dieselgate, and it's focusing hard on plug-in hybrids and EVs. So 2020 will be when the new platform for the all-electric range comes out. VW are going to sell this car, if you order it with sat-nav, from this summer onwards, with something called Predictive Hybrid Strategy. Now what that is, apart from having quite a weird name, is very, very intriguing. It's going to use GPS data and it's going to use road sign recognition to be able to tailor the modes on your car. So in other words, whether you set the sat-nav or whether you don't, what it will do is it will know the road that you're on, and it will know the topography of the road, and it will choose the settings accordingly. So if it knows you're going through a bit busy town, it will know to switch into EV mode, or it'll know to conserve some of its battery power to use in the congested area, and little things like that. So it's actually very clever. Now I'm sure this technology has been used before with automatic gearboxes on models like Bentleys, and Bentley's of course part of the VW group, so that it can change the gearbox and change gear down for you before you even get to a corner, knowing where the corner is and how tight the corner is. So this is very clever technology that you're using, which will hopefully make the car even more economical. Now, of course, you can manually override all that. That will be when you buy the GTE from summer onwards. If you order it prior to then, like now, like this car, it doesn't have it and it cannot be retrofitted, which is a bit of a shame. The Golf GTE has got an 8.7 kilowatt hour battery pack, lithium ion of course, and that lives underneath the rear seats. That's where, on the normal Golf, the petrol tank lives. But of course this has a petrol engine as well, so where does the fuel tank live in this car? The GTE has a petrol tank that's different, and that lives under here, because this is a false floor. So under there is the new fuel tank. Now the new fuel tank is smaller than a regular Golf as well. That's a 40 litre tank as opposed to a 50 litre tank. But combined with the electric power and the engine propulsion, this will do 580 miles full range. What that means is you lose about 108 litres of boot space. This is a 272 litre boot, so it's still big, not noticeable unless you parked it next to another Golf. Got to think of this as being the sort of eco brother to the GTI, and there's also a GTD. We won't talk about the GTD because that's diesel. Volkswagen don't like us to talk about diesel anymore. That's why there's lots of little blue details. You've got your blue calipers on the brakes here, and then this beautiful detail inside the lights. But if you look at a Golf GTI, a current GTI, it's kind of all the same, but the GTI is red and this is blue. Essentially what they're trying to say is, if you want to have a hybrid car that's fun to drive and charismatic and has that hot hatch appeal, this is it. On a normal day-to-day basis, you can drive this as a plug-in car, 30-mile range, so the normal average commute you can probably do without the engine even striking up. But then if you want the engine to strike up, you can use the DSG paddle shift gearbox and you can actually have a right hoot in it. Now the GTE is only available in one body style. That's 5-door hatch, not 3-door, and you can't buy this in an estate, which is a bit sad because that's what I'd really like. The thing about Golfs is, for a 5-door hatch that's quite medium in size, they're always very, very roomy. They're always really comfortable, to be honest, and the fit and finish of the materials is always excellent. One thing I would say is, get something a bit more interesting when it comes to upholstery, because sort of black leather, it's a bit dull. When you could get, I think you can get the tartan GTI seats in the GTE, and that's what I would go for. But headroom's amazing in here. It's cliche for a motoring journalist to say Golfs are just really good all-round cars, but they've been making this car for 40 odd years now. The bottom line is, a Golf does everything very, very well. It's also highly classless, and it also has really good residual values. People always want Golfs.